Right. Welcome back to the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. This Tuesday afternoon, in our second session here, we have the pleasure of having members of the Vermont State Youth Council, which this committee in its former iteration set up last biennium. And I'm really excited to welcome a number of our youth council members here today. And I'm told that Joshua Stearns is going to be our first witness, and Mr. O'Connell Cooper, you're going to be second. And I think there's a number of you that I've been given a list here of who's testifying. So, and my understanding is that you're going to give us some report backs from the council at large, and then from some of the specific subcommittees. Well, please go ahead, take it away. Introduce yourself for the record. Tell us what town you're from. And as you guys are speaking, and then, yeah, we're really excited to have you here today. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. My name is Josh Stearns. I use he, him pronouns. I'm from Norwich, Vermont, and I'm a senior at Hanover High School in Hanover, New Hampshire. And I'm also chair of the Vermont State Youth Council. I want to begin by thanking you all for listening to our recommendations today. We're all very excited to be presenting our work from the past year with you all. The State Youth Council was established in 2022 by Act 109 to allow for new perspectives to be considered in policymaking. Today, the council is composed of 28 young people, and 6 of us are here today to share our work with you, plus 1 online. Importantly, the council represents the diversity of Vermont's young people, including such things as geography, race, age, and gender. The council has 5 subcommittees: climate change, education, equity and anti-racism, youth mental health, and youth voice. Each committee has written recommendations, and representatives are here to share summaries. In addition, the full council has written recommendations on the participation of young persons in Vermont's economy, keeping young Vermonters in the state, the preservation of Vermont's traditions, and the future of Vermont's rural character, activities, and professions. The council has been meeting for a year, and we've had to build our processes and practices as we went. We recognize that we're just a small sample of young people, so as we go forward, we plan to build on the groundwork we've laid to gather input from more young people. We also want to recognize the importance of being here today as the first youth council. This council is a concrete avenue for young people to use their voices. In a world which changes immensely every day, a world in which the experiences of young people shift, it is critical that they are given a platform to affect change. Everyone is young at least once in their lives, but the experiences of each generation are unique. Young people want to engage in conversation. We recognize that we have a lot to learn from the generations ahead of us, and we also hope that by having a seat at the table, others can hear and learn from us. The existence of this council has already set us on the right path towards a more inclusive, representative, and democratic state. Thank you. And we will kick things off with the Climate Change Committee.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Cooper O'Connell. I am from St. Albans in Franklin County, and I am the chair of the Climate Change Committee. All right. Vermont youth will be living with the results of our actions today, so we must adapt to environmental needs to ensure a safe environment for youth in the future. Environmental science is constantly evolving, and with that, we are learning more about our effects on the environment. Therefore, the council recommends the following. Our first recommendation is to require climate change and other environmental problems to become a part of the public school curriculum in order to create a more environmentally conscious generation. This recommendation was left broad intentionally to leave it up to people with the correct credentials and the state government to develop a statewide curriculum. We believe not only as youth but as students this recommendation to be very important. Our next recommendation is for Vermont to invest in alternative and efficient energy sources in order to reduce our statewide carbon footprint by 90% by the year 2040. This could be done by providing tax incentives and affordable options for renewable energy implementation, compost and recycling participation, and electric vehicle purchases. With this goal, we took a more ambitious approach to Governor Scott's current climate plan, which is achieving 90% renewable energy by 2050. Some people may say that some renewable energy devices, such as wind turbines, may be harmful to the environment and may even deem them as bird killers. According to a study done by MIT, they found that wind projects kill 0.269 birds per gigawatt hour of electricity produced compared to 5.18 birds killed per gigawatt of electricity produced from fossil fuel projects. Even though we said before it's not perfect, it is certainly an improvement. Our next recommendation is to minimize vehicle animal impacts by reducing speed limits and increasing speeding penalties in wildlife areas to protect Vermont's animal populations. This was one that many of us felt was incredibly important. We all have noticed the amount of deceased animals on the sides of the busy roads within the state. According to some estimates, automobile collisions kill more than 1 million animals each day, making it the leading cause of death for many species. Some sources say that an estimated 1 to 2 million crashes between motor vehicles and large animals such as deer occur in the US every year. This results in over $8 billion in property damage to be paid to fix these vehicles. This recommendation will reduce animal and car collisions. This helps not only the animals, but the drivers as well. States such as Arizona and California have begun to construct wildlife bridges. Washington is currently building bridges for its Interstate 9. Our final recommendation is that 50% of Vermont's state forest and biodiverse working lands are protected by the year 2040 to ensure safe habitats for native species. Due to problems like the Telephone Gap Project, we want to ensure land conservation is prioritized by the state government. We not only want to ensure forestry for Vermonters in the future, but we also want to protect biodiversity and for climate change.
Thank you very much, Josh and Cooper, for kicking things off here. If I understand it correctly, is it Aaliyah?
Mhm.
And Harmony's gonna be after Aaliyah?
Thank you. Sorry. So my name is Aaliyah, I believe. I'm from Shasbury, Vermont, and I'm here on behalf of the Education Committee for the Vermont State Youth Council. Oh, and I'm in 8th grade. I don't know if you want to know that. Okay, so the Education Committee believes that all Vermont youth deserve access to high-quality, inclusive learning opportunities. We strive for all Vermont youth to have a safe and ethical learning requirement, thus creating a more enjoyable learning experience for all. Therefore, the Education Committee's Youth Council recommends that you should be screened for dyslexia and other reading disabilities starting at a younger age, particularly in between kindergarten and 3rd grade. This could increase the reading scores in Vermont. In Vermont, only 1 in 3 students can read proficiently on grade level, and only 34% of 8th graders can read on grade level, which has dropped in the past 20 years instead of increasing. Students with disabilities or dyslexia can take 20 times as much repeated intervention than non-disabilitized students. 1 in 5 people are identified with dyslexia, and most of them are never, 1 in 5 people have dyslexia, and most of them are never identified with it. Not being identified with it leads to them having low literacy scores in schools. And low literacy is proven to link to poor health, poverty, low self-esteem, anger, school failure, school dropout, anxiety, depression, and even suicide in some cases. The solution for this is a push in science-based reading instructions, particularly for teachers K through 5 and English teachers 5 through 12. And also to have mandatory yearly screening for dyslexia/reading screening for students in dyslexia, kindergarten through 2nd grade, to catch poor readers, because it is most effective for their brains to learn to read differently through ages K through 2nd. 41 states already have this law in work. The impact of this is we will be able to keep more teachers in Vermont, because teachers are not struggling with their students misbehaving because of their lack of help in schools and not being able to read proficiently. Our second recommendation is all students on individualized education programs, IEPs, and 504s to be offered the opportunity to connect with the mental health services. Suggestions include a counselor available to talk to the student at least once per month. By providing mental health on a monthly basis for students on IEPs and 504s, it would help them manage their lives better. These students often struggle with comparing themselves to their peers, even though their peers may be performing at higher qualities of educational needs than they are due to the fact that they are struggling with a disability. If we offer these for students, if we offer mental health for students is on IEPs and 504 at least once a month, then they may be less likely to drop out of school early or go into using more riskier behaviors to get what they want in schools. Our third recommendation is for schools across Vermont to increase pay for teachers, staff, social workers, and mental health contractors who work within the school system to ensure constant, equitable, and livable wages. By enacting this, we will ensure teachers and school staff stay in this profession in our community, but also to bring other teachers into our state. We believe that this will make lives better. This will make the school environment better for both teachers and students alike. Because statewide, we have a teacher shortage, and raising wages will help people stay and come into this profession. Teachers and school staff deserve comfortable, livable, equitable wages in order to stay in our thriving community. We ask that these recommendations not be ignored solely due to funding. Thank you.
My name is Harmony Depot, and I live in Warren, and I'm the chair of the Equity and Anti-Racism Committee. Our committee recommends that the Vermont Global Citizenship, College Career, and Civic Life Framework for Social Studies State Standards Graduation Proficiencies and Performance Indicator be expanded to include an explicit equity focus. We believe that all Vermont youth deserve to experience belonging and to have equitable access to opportunities to contribute towards community well-being. Everyone should be provided ways to help the community. Education on equity helps people to be able to know more about the world around them, so they can be more critical thinkers and be kind to those that may be different to them. We also recognize that many Vermonters, especially those with marginalized identities, encounter systemic, cultural, and interpersonal discrimination, and many Vermonters encounter barriers to accessing the appropriate education to address this. We chose to focus our recommendation on education guidelines, as we believe systemic and cultural change begins with education. Integrating equity education into schools is an effective strategy for improving equity throughout a culture and a system, and is linked to positive student and faculty outcomes. We also recognize that understanding the multitude of ways inequity, injustice, and oppression impact societies and communities is a critical aspect of global citizenship. Our recommendation consists of additional equity-focused subcategories and corresponding graduation proficiency performance indicators for 12th grade to be added to the Global Citizenship Social Studies State Standards. We have created recommended additions for each subcategory, and I believe they can be found in the link on the handout. The titles for each section would be added as additional entries in the categories within column farthest to the left, and the bulleted text would be added as the corresponding graduation proficiency performance indicators in the 12th grade column farthest to the right. Our recommendation so far only includes learning targets for 12th grade. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaliyah and Harmony. And our last two presenters, Jackson Dalbra and Amanda Riley. Right.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jackson Delper. I'm 16. I live in Heartland, Vermont, and I go to Hartford High School. I am also a Youth Mental Health Committee Chair. All youth in Vermont must have access to high-quality mental health care. Therefore, the Vermont State Youth Council recommends that the General Assembly pass legislation to allocate funding to build an inpatient eating disorder facility within the state to accommodate the increase in eating disorder diagnoses seen in the last several years. Vermont has to send eating disorder patients who need extensive inpatient care across state lines. This is an inaccessible solution to many Vermonters, especially young Vermonters. Vermont has seen a large increase in reported eating disorders in the past couple of years. Between March 2020 and March 2022, MEDA, a Massachusetts-based inpatient facility that treats a large number of Vermont eating disorder patients, reported an increase in attendance of over 700%. Because of this increasing number, we feel that it will benefit the youth of Vermont if we had an inpatient eating disorder facility in the state. We also recommend that We also recommend that you guarantee students are provided excused absences for at least 5 mental health days per semester. Semesters are about 5 months for most schools. This means that each student would have approximately 1 mental health day a month, depending on how they use them. Students find themselves getting burned out in school. School is one of the main causes for mental health issues in kids today. Giving them a day a month that they can use if needed gives them a chance to recharge and then go back to school. Having a small break when needed can help kids focus better in school and will overall improve their learning in school. Furthermore, we recommend that you advocate for Medicaid to be able to be used across state lines so that Vermont youth have affordable access to specialized care. Vermont is a very small state and doesn't always have the resources to help all youth. I personally have to travel across state lines to get care at Boston Children's Hospital for a rare condition. I am lucky to have insurance that covers things like that, but some people don't. When things like this happen, most parents will do anything for their child, and that sometimes means moving away for care. If you were to advocate for Medicaid across state lines, this would help ensure that more youth are able to stay in the state and still receive the care they need. We also would like if you ensure that schools have access to more counselors. Where do youth spend most of their time? Usually at school. If we add more counselors in our schools, it gives youth more access to help they need, but maybe can't get outside of school. School counselors are so overworked and overbooked right now because of the mental health crisis in our country. They need help, but also youth need help. Having more counselors in school would help both of those problems. Thank you.
I'm Amanda Riley. I'm the Youth Voice Committee Chair, and I'm from Windsor. The Youth Voice Committee believes that all Vermont youth must know they will be asked, believed, and respected in making decisions important to and impact them, thus having a voice in their lives and communities. Our first recommendation is to extend the sunset period for the State Youth Council to repeal Act 109 on February 1st, 2030. Enacting this change will ensure the State Youth Council can continue to provide a platform for youth to be heard directly by state decision makers. We'll also continue to engage youth into wanting to participate in the governing and lawmaking process. In addition, the council is really just getting started. And so we want to ensure that we don't have an end of council date looming over us. These are just our first recommendations, and we think we have a lot more to offer. Given the ever-evolving nature of being a young person of today, it is extremely important for youth to have a strong voice to ensure that the youth perspective is accounted for. Our second recommendation is to pass a resolution to advocate for and offer to support communities extending voting rights to 16 or 17-year-olds. This change will give youth a direct voice in their government, allow them practice to become democratic citizens, and result in election outcomes which are more representative of the population's opinion. We should be committed as a society to produce democratic and aware citizens. And there's no better learning than practice. Studies have shown that vote quality for younger voters is equal to or exceeds the vote quality of older voters. So younger voters will align their vote with their values at an equal rate as older adults. Act 109 also allows us to survey Vermont youth, so we are planning to conduct a survey this spring. Each committee has already written questions in preparation for the survey. Survey responses will better inform our recommendations and decision-making as a council going forward. Act 109 also grants us the ability to hold up to 4 public hearings per year. We are in the process of planning our first public hearing to further our goal of broadening input to the council. These hearings will allow for youth to directly share their thoughts and input with us, to strengthen our recommendations and decisions as a council. Finally, the council has voted to support SB 18 to ban flavored tobacco products and HB 682 to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Thank you.
So was that all of the subcommittee report outs?
Yes.
Has a couple other like council-wide ones.
Yes.
to
Excellent.
share about.
Our final recommendations are on the participation of young persons in Vermont's economy and keeping young Vermonters in the state. as well as the preservation of Vermont's traditions and the future of Vermont's rural character, activities, and professions. Many young people today are looking at their futures with immense doubt. Vermont must plan for the road ahead and ensure that the future of this state is one which balances demographics and protects our futures and those of many generations to come. Our recommendations reflect young people's desire for a secure future. More than ever, young people are looking for opportunities to live and work in a diverse community with opportunities for jobs, recreation, and housing. Our first recommendation is to encourage development in large urban centers in Vermont. Many young people desire opportunity beyond the agricultural sector and are looking for a variety of economic and cultural opportunities. Focusing development in limited areas to attract more people will also increase business opportunities while not infringing upon the state's rural character. Our second recommendation is to update the statewide real estate taxation structure to make it possible for young people to buy land for agriculture and forestry businesses. Look, we're certainly not tax experts, but we recognize that tax codes can be used to incentivize behavior, including the behavior of getting young people to move to and stay in Vermont. Our third recommendation is to reevaluate and update Vermont's utility infrastructure to facilitate and encourage housing development with the goal of increasing affordable housing for young people. Young people are increasingly struggling to become homeowners throughout the country. If there's a path towards homeownership in Vermont, young people will be more interested in staying or moving here. Finally, we recommend to increase and educate about the importance of cultural and racial diversity in Vermont. To attract and retain young people, Vermont must commit itself to building an inclusive and open society. Thank you all for listening to our recommendations today, and we welcome any questions or feedback.
Questions from the committee first. Representative Chase and then Representative Hidden.
Not a question, but good job, y'all. You do better with the public speaking than a lot of us do.
That's
I was looking at all of us and then it's behind you.
Representative, go ahead.
Again, I have a question and then a comment. I noticed whether it's under youth mental health, talking about access to more counselors, allocating more funding, education, increased pay for teachers and staff, social workers, mental health contractors, and so on. Was there any indication by the youth council in regards to looking at where the money comes from for these sorts of funding? Because again, you can say all you want about increasing funding for all these initiatives, but where that money comes from is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis here, and that's the struggle. So I certainly understand the recommendations, but I think it's just as important for you folks to get a hold of and try to have some understanding of where that money comes from.
Ask this off the chair of the youth mental health committee.
Yes, we understand that it has money, but this council is only the beginning, and we just wanted you all to know our intentions, and what we want, not really right now, the funding.
Yeah, like you guys said, sorry, Nicole Miller, Executive Director from the Higher School for the record. And that you all are just beginning your process and really looking into more research, and certainly take your point home.
And then if I could just make a statement, and I, for some reason, I was on the committee when we developed this youth council. And I remember signing on to it specifically because I got a piece included in there and I don't see it. And maybe committee members can also help me with this, but one of the subcommittees that I was very critical and hoping would be signed on to was a rural perspective. In other words, things that are related to farming, logging, and so on. And I'm pretty sure I got that in there, but I don't see it in there. And that's a real concern for me, especially coming from the area that I do. So Lowell J, Westfield, Troy, Eden, Newport Center, and I had, the main reason that I supported the initial concept was because I got that piece in there and I don't see it anymore. And I'm sorry for that.
Josh, could you talk a little bit about how you sort of took the statute that we had passed? I know you mentioned sort of rural Vermont and traditions as you were doing your wrap up, but how did that get worked into the conversations of the youth youth council was having.
Sure. Well, that line, basically it's on the top on the final page, is directly pulled from Act 109. And so the way we basically worked on recommendations was each committee wrote recommendations, and then the full council essentially worked together to put together these final ones. And certainly this is just a starting point for the council. And I think, as you've heard from Amanda, we have quite a lot more work to do. I also want to note that this past year, as we've worked on recommendations, we've also had to build the structure of the council. We've had to write bylaws in addition to this, and really figure out how do our meetings run? What does our meeting schedule look like? So the council work goes far beyond the recommendations. I think in the future, having had this experience, we'll be able to fold in the rural perspective, like both of you mentioned, into more of our recommendations, hopefully in the future.
One of the things that I saw when a few of us visited the youth council and were able to go and sit with some of the subcommittees over the summer was that there was a real diversity in terms of the kind of ideological and the perspectives and the backgrounds of the different folks who were on the council. And I think that one of the things that many of us are concerned with is that the council be representative of our communities. And it sounds like you all are from a bunch of different places. And I think that I'm hearing from you, Representative Higley, is we'd like to see you take a look at making sure that youth who are concerned about Vermont's traditions and the kind of rural life that so many of us value here is part of the discussion as we look at some of these things. You all have looked at an awful lot of different policy areas in your subcommittees. And I really applaud you for that. But I think Representative Higley, your point's well taken that we want to maybe get at more of the rural character and traditions with some of the recommendations with the council going forward.
Yeah.
Representative Morgan.
Yeah, I would just second that same. I mean, just due to the rural composition of Vermont, still having a lot of the things that Rep. Higley talked about as part of our way of life here need to be wrapped into this greater discussion. I'm not being accusatory and saying it's absent, but I think it just needs to be folded in. It'd be a good way to say it, because certainly Vermont has morphed in my 62 years here. But as a kid, I think, yeah, like Rep. Higley said, I couldn't overemphasize that. I think it needs to be folded in. So, that might be your next steps, if you are part of your next steps.
I had a question for Aaliyah about the recommendation and the focus on dyslexia screening. We don't do ed policy here, but I was wondering if that's something that you've specifically sent to the ed committee, and if you maybe could just give me a brief understanding of how that topic came up as one of the priorities, because it was very specific and I wanted to know what the story is there.
So I was kind of like the person brought up because I have dyslexia. And I've been struggling with it with like all my life. Currently I'm only reading at like 4th grade level and I'm in 8th grade. And so we have, I think our next step is to go to the education committee. Yes, thank you. To talk to them more about that. And I know there is a bill currently that kind of has to do with that. Sorry.
So you're an 8th grader?
I am an 8th.
I thought you were a high schooler. You're still going to be well spoken. Good for you.
Any other questions for our youth council? Representative Nugent.
Just thank you so much for the presentations. I really appreciated how there was a little bit of research behind all your recommendations that you shared. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of how you honed in on what research to look at or where it came from.
Just go.
Yeah, I think each committee really had their own process because it's such a wide net of topics. So maybe if some committee chairs who might want to talk about this, maybe we can. So Leah, maybe.
I'll go. So, we got a little bit more information from like past bills and laws. We looked at some that kind of had to do with these topics, or even bills that weren't passed. But we also used the Stern Center, as one of our big people who we looked at and got our information from. And also for, as I mentioned, the science-based reading, there were actually scientific reports kind of on reading and mental health. So we looked at some of those.
Yeah, so like one of the things that I pointed out was the governor's current plan. His climate plan is kind of used like past policy and legislation that was passed in ours, and we also did research, like I cited an MIT study for the bird deaths when it comes to wind turbines, so it was really just research that aligned with stuff that we've seen and kind of that we've heard for complaints within like around school or friends. Like one of the things that I cited was the amount of wildlife deceased on the sides of our roads. That was one thing that we've all noticed. I'm always in the car because my dad lives in a separate state, and the amount of deceased animals I see on the side of roads is a really big issue. So we kind of did some research into that. We learned about wildlife bridges and the crossings, and so that's kind of how we got ours by personal experiences from talking to other people about their experiences and what other youth would like to see.
My committee, research, which mostly came from Josh, when it came to the lowering voting age.
And I can chime in a bit here. We looked at, in terms of the voting age recommendation, it was inspired really by the news from Brattleboro, lowering the voting age there to 16 and up in municipal elections. So we really delved into the debate on the state level. What was Governor Scott saying when he vetoed it? What were his reasons? What was the state house's reasoning for supporting it? And maybe what was the reasoning of the minority who opposed that in the state house? And then also then doing research beyond that, like the study Amanda mentioned about vote quality. We can send that to you if you would like. I found that really interesting personally, just the fact that the vote quality of young people actually, and vote quality means the alignment of a person's values with how they cast their vote. That is actually equal to or higher than the vote quality of older voters, because the young people who do vote typically do more research, or they're engaging in conversations in the classroom. So, yeah.
Focus a lot on their stories and experiences more than so about how we do could impact those feelings so that they feel more positive. We also kind of do that experiences, but also we're lucky as the mental health to have the youth behavioral risk survey that we can go online and find the results for and the data and all that kind of stuff. So we use that a lot. We also they're not on Zoom sadly, but I have an amazing like person on my committee who is very up to date with bills and stuff, and we'll send them our way when it's like, oh, here's some more things that I found about this, and so they are also there, and then also personal research that we've done ourselves or personal experiences are how we do that.
Love that you're having a youth hearing to bring in other youth voices to inform some of your recommendations moving forward. The youth voice subcommittee, I feel like, is the most GovOpsy of the some of us over here in GovOps, we're a little nerdy about elections policy, municipal government. There's some things that are kind of uniquely GovOps. The rest of our legislative colleagues don't totally understand. So when I saw the youth voice recommendations, I'm like, oh, okay, youth voting, like some of what we're doing and some of these charter changes there. But I think the public hearing and the fact that you're going to go out and host a process to bring in people who might not be on the council, but have perspectives to share is a really great way for you all to be, broadening the amount of voice and the democratic process amongst your peers. So I'm excited to hear you doing that. Do you have a sense of what that's going to look like? How are you going to invite people to that? Interested to learn a little bit more about that.
Well, we're really in the infantile stages of planning that, because it's certainly something that's difficult to plan. Just in we were in a meeting with the Senate Government Operations Committee, and they were talking about reaching out to them so that they can send out the word to their constituents. I think that would be a fantastic way. One thing that we've talked about over the past year is how do we get the word out about the council? And many ideas have been brought up, like, for example, sending out an email to each person's student council or the superintendent's association or the school board association in Vermont. So there are many avenues that we're exploring really to get out the word for that.
One of the things we keep hearing as adults who are involved in government is that youth don't really care. The voter turnout among, the early age of voters, 18 to 29, isn't as good. And we're just concerned about people losing faith in this process of, electing people to public office and getting involved in their communities. And you're all making us feel a lot better about the next generation coming up. So I want to applaud you for that. And you're also doing some real work of debating amongst yourselves and looking into issues that I think we're concerned that a lot of your peers aren't thinking about. Some of the things, and Representative Higley brought up, what are some of these things that we recommended costs? It'd be interesting to see as the youth council evolves if you're able to kind of look at some of the fiscal notes that are attached to the bills that we do, or look at how much the state is spending on a specific budget line item and where does that money come from? Is it state? Is it local? Is it federal? And start to learn a little bit more about the financial decisions that we struggle with here in the legislature. So I wonder if there is room for kind of a fiscal component to some of the recommendations that the council makes in the future. I did want to say that one of the recommendations that the Youth Voice Subcommittee made was that we extend the sunset, which right now the Youth Council's goes out to 2030.
2026.
Goes out to 2026. And you're saying extended to 2030. So I wanted to ask if the recommendation was for us to extend it out to 2030. So we'll have to, the idea behind sunsets is always to make sure, do we have the right makeup? Is this set up correctly? It's not necessarily that we want something to not exist anymore, but we've tried to be disciplined about not allowing defunct boards or commissions or councils to stay on the books. So right now we're out to 26, so we'll need to put in a bill next biennium in order to push that out. So thank you for flagging that. Now I understand if we want to see the youth council move beyond the next biennium, we've got to give you all some more time when we get back next year. Anything else for our state youth council while they're here? I'm going to break us a little early from our formal committee testimony so that we have a little bit of time to talk with these youth and get to some 4 o'clock hour meetings. So we'll have be adjourning our official testimony a little bit early today. Tomorrow committee, before we just a preview of coming attractions. We've got some testimony in the morning starting at 9. So we're going to be getting the intro to the OPR bill, which we just got the draft language. So that'll be posted if anybody wants to take a look at that ahead of time. And the back half of the morning will be going back into some testimony on the ethics proposals. So it'll be a pretty busy day tomorrow.